to help me welcome Adam Jablin today. He is an author, a coach, an entrepreneur, and a dad. He's also been sober for almost 18 years, and he's helped almost 9,000 clients. So welcome, Adam. We are so glad to have you today on the Hope Coach.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Awesome. So you want to tell me just maybe a little bit, how did you find my podcast?
Yeah, well, like we were discussing earlier. So my assistant and I we like the idea of finding people that we can resonate with and we believe are making an impact. And the word hope means a lot to me. So in recovery, we talk about our experience, our strength, and our hope. And I'm a big Superman guy.
Yes.
And in the most recent remake of Superman, called Man of Steel, there's a scene where Lois Lane is with Superman and she asks him what's with the S. And he looks at the symbol on his chest and he says, "Oh, that's not an S. On my planet, this means hope." You know, and she's very funny. She goes, "Well, here it's an S." So I felt a natural connection and we reached out and you were happy to oblige.
Yes, absolutely. I was honored. I was excited to meet you and also to chat for a little bit and see where the conversation goes for both of all of our clients. You
Sounds
just
fun.
have a lot of clients.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
So what you just mentioned, when you mentioned the Superman stuff, I know a little bit about you talking a little bit about that, and you kind of having had a bit of a Superman complex. I think you referred to that. Can
Yeah.
you tell us about that?
Yeah. So ever since well, in all honesty, there's a picture of me born on the planet, first day on the planet with an S on me as a little baby. And I don't know why this thing stuck. I don't know why I fell in love with the character. It's 47 years later, but the Superman complex is more of somebody that wants to save the day and rescue, somebody that wants to always help others. So if you want to torture Superman, if you want to torture him, what you do is you put Lois Lane over here and a bomb in Metropolis over there and say, choose. He also has kryptonite. For me, that's alcohol and drugs. So I had this complex in which, some people could call it people pleasing until a counselor and a therapist really taught me, no, you don't have a people pleasing problem. You have a rescuing problem. You want harmony in the world at all times, and you're willing to go to any length that will hurt you to help others. And that resonated with me. I am somebody that has my own identity, my own likes. I don't tell people I like something if I don't. I don't hang out with this person and say I like Biden, and I hang out with this person say I like Trump. I don't go over here and say, oh, I'm a vegan, and then go over here and say I like steak. I'm not seeking people's approval constantly, right? But what I was seeking was harmony.
Yes.
And how can I help? So that's the Superman complex.
Yeah. Well, that's very interesting. We talked a little bit before about that, how I can relate to that a little bit. I wouldn't call myself Superman or necessarily Superman complex, but I certainly like harmony and certainly like for everyone to be happy around me. So I can relate to that a little bit of towards the people pleasing angle, maybe, but very, very interesting. And, I think when you've mentioned about your recovery and, if you want to tell us maybe a little bit more about your story with that.
Yeah. So I am coming up on 18 years clean and sober. And I am an alcoholic and an addict. I truly am. And that is not a condemnation. That's an admission. So alcoholism addiction in the medical association is considered a disease. Now it takes 4 qualifications to be a disease, 4 of them, right? One is you have to be progressive, meaning over time you get worse. Second is you have to be chronic, meaning it's always there. So if I pick up a drink right now, I activate my alcoholism again, right? The third is you have to be primary, meaning not secondary. You're the first cause. I got a DUI because I drank. It was the first cause, right? I didn't drink because I got a DUI.
Mhm.
And the fourth one is that you have to be fatal. It has to kill you over time.
Wow.
Now, if you take one of those away, that's a disorder, which is already pretty bad,
Mhm.
but you put all four of them in the mix and you have a disease. So when I started learning about alcoholism and addiction in a rehab facility, I went in thinking there's nothing wrong with me. It's everybody else. I was a high performer, a high achiever, work hard, play hard kind of guy. But my whole identity shifted in that 20-day treatment facility.
Wow.
And rather than always being about me, I, it became about we.
Mhm.
And I learned that I had a
Mhm.
spiritual sickness that centers in my mind, that's always talking to me, always telling me negative things, always, made me very thirsty, right? And it attacks the physical body. So I have an allergy, a compulsion that wants to drink more.
Mhm.
Um, but the only way out of it was a spiritual way out. It was new ideas, new beliefs, new attitudes on life. And
Mhm.
I adopted those. And I'm really happy I did.
Yeah. Well, I am too. Can you tell us a little bit what maybe even example of one of those new ideas was?
Yeah, well, first off, was admitting that I was an alcoholic and an addict. I mean, the first time I met my counselor, I told him how there were 3 books in my detox room. Very first night, there was a 24-hour day prayer book, which seemed a little too religious for me at the time.
Mhm.
There was a book called Narcotics Anonymous. Now, I had done tons of drugs, but I never called them a narcotic, so I wasn't going to touch that. And there was a book called Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, I had heard of AA from the movies, from this, from that. It's pretty popular. So I picked up that book, and I really thought it was going to be a book about a couple of guys, few drunk guys that can't stop drinking, and you go through this hero's journey, and that at the end they figure out how to drink.
Mhm.
But it wasn't like that at all. It was, and there's a chapter in there called The Doctor's Opinion. And I read the doctor's opinion and it fit me like a glove.
Mhm.
And it really scared me how well it fit.
Mhm.
Talking about how we don't drink like average drinkers, that there are such things as heavy drinkers, but they can stop,
Mhm.
and that when we drink, it's like a compulsion and an allergy and we can't stop. And we swear that we're always going to go on the wagon just to end up going back to it. And all of these things were just resonating with me. And I remember saying with my counselor, I told him I read the doctor's opinion, and he looked at me like I was an anomaly. He's like, "You read the doctor's opinion?" And I'm confused. I didn't realize that it was a big deal. I'm like, it's not like we had a TV and I could watch the Laker game. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like there was nothing to do in the detox room. He's like, "Well, what did you think?" And I'm like, "I think there's a lot of me in there." He goes, "Would you say you're an alcoholic?" And I was like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa. I wouldn't go that far." And he asked me point blank, he goes, "Well, let me ask you this. Did you ever wake up in the morning and swear to yourself you won't drink and you end up drinking anyway?" And I'm like, "All the time." All
Mhm.
He goes, "Okay, well, did you ever make a deal with yourself and say, okay, tonight I'll only drink 2 or 3, but when you started, you couldn't stop?" I'm
Mhm.
like, "Every time." He goes,
Mhm.
"Well, if you wake up in the morning and you say you're not going to drink and you end up drinking anyway,
Mhm.
and then you make a deal with yourself saying I'll only have 2 or 3, but when you start, you can't stop, would you say you were powerless?"
Mhm.
And I could not find a way out. His bishop to my pawn, his knight to my, I, I just, it was checkmate. I'm
Mhm.
like, "Yeah, I guess I'm powerless." He goes, "Well, would you say your life is unmanageable?"
Mhm.
So I sat there, I took stock of my life. I'm calling my goatee, I'm thinking about the business deal I just made, thinking about the house, thinking about the wife, the kid, and all of a sudden he's looking at me like I'm crazy. And all of a sudden he bangs on the table. He's like, "Adam, you're in rehab." And I look down, I notice I'm wearing slippers and there's crayons on the table over there. And I'm like, "Yeah, I guess my life is unmanageable." And
Mhm.
what was happening was every single day, 3 or 4 times a day, I had these aha moments. I remember the first time I said I'm an alcoholic and an addict, it was like a 600-pound gorilla came off my shoulders and I could breathe for the first time. And
Mhm.
everything in my life made sense. Everything made sense. That's why I had written my wife 30 letters that I would stop drinking. That's why I got a DUI. That's why I did this. That's why I did that. But then within a second of relief was, now what? How do I watch football with my dad? How do I see my friends from college? How do I entertain customers? alcohol was that much part of my life. It was like having a best friend.
Mm.
Then I went to this lecture by a guy named Dr. John Diven, who's sensational. And it was the first time I ever heard of this. And he was talking about spirituality. And he was teaching that you can have healthy spirituality versus unhealthy spirituality. I didn't even know that existed. And then he said spirituality are like muscles. Like, so you can't get more spiritual. You can't get more muscles. You can't get another deltoid, another bicep, another tricep, another pectoral muscle, another lat, another quadricep, right? You're born with all the spirituality you're ever going to need. It's a God-given gift, like muscles. But what you can do is you can make it bigger, faster, stronger, healthier, more powerful, but you can't get more of it.
Mm.
And he's like, you could see healthy spirituality. It's in somebody's eyes. There's a celebration, there's a happiness, there's a joy. They tend to find their words well.
Mm.
They like to communicate with you. There's just an aura. He said you could also see unhealthy spirituality.
Mm.
There's a lack of communication. They break eye contact. They tend not to find their words well. There's a vibration with them that you just feel like maybe they're lying or hiding something, and it's and it's just it's a very awkward feeling. And I knew I had to dive into healthy spirituality. Before you know it, I'm sitting from this guy named Father Ron, a Catholic priest. Another day, I'm a Jew from Jersey. He's asking me if I believe in God. I feel like anytime a Catholic priest asks you if you believe in God, the answer should be yes. And I'm like, oh, I open the door for old ladies and I have good manners and law of attraction and woo, you know what I mean? And he's like, okay. And he asks me to stick my arm out. So I stick my arm out and he touches me like that. He goes, do you see what I did there? And I look at my arm and I look at the Father and I look at my arm and I'm like, Father, I'm sorry, I don't get it. And he does it again. He goes, you see what I did that time? And I look at my arm, I look at the Father, I look at my arm, I'm like, Father, I'm Jewish. There may be some sort of disconnect. He starts laughing. He does it again. He's like, you see what I did that time? Now I'm confused and I use humor, right? So I'm like, Father, I heard about you guys with little boys. You know what I mean? I don't know what's going on here. He starts laughing. He shuts the lights off and he takes a UV light out and he shines it on my arm. And in the dark, all of his fingertips are glowing. All of his fingerprints. He goes, Adam, do you believe that there's a power all around you that you can't see, taste, touch, none of the 5 basic senses, that has been loving you, guiding you, protecting you, and brought you here with me now? And I'm staring at these fingerprints glowing. And I'm like, Father, I can believe. I can believe. And he turns the lights back on, they disappear. I'm like, do it again, do it again. And he does it again for me. And this Catholic priest took this Jew from Jersey and downloaded him into the matrix. I was able to establish for the very first time my own personal relationship with God. And these lessons kept happening one after another. I had a profound spiritual experience in this treatment center. I thought I was going to leave in day 10. On day 9, I had to say my story in front of these 30 alcoholic addicts. I say my story. They all identify with me after. Oh my God. Woo, Adam, and they're relating to me, which is not good in my opinion, And, oh, you were the fat kid. I was the skinny kid. You went to Arizona State University. I went to Ohio State. Everybody's relating to me somehow. I'm like, this isn't good. And that night, my white light experience came in the form of a panic attack. And my blood pressure was way over 180. I was freaking out. My skin was bright red. I was hyperventilating. They sent me to the nurse's station and they started giving me a paper bag to breathe in. And I was very offended. I was like, you got to give me a Xanax or something. You got to calm me down. And they're like, no. This is your moment. What's wrong? What's wrong? And I'm like, I think this is real. I think all of this is real. Everything you're teaching me. The disease of alcoholism. I'm an alcoholic and addict, the spirituality, the steps of recovery, the inner child work. I think all this is real. And I think I have to stay. And they're like, so what? So you stay, you do the full 28 days. And I'm like, I told everyone I was going to be out of here in 10 days. It was always that ego. I called my wife at the time. It was 5 a.m. She was scared. She was terrified. She's like, what's wrong? What's wrong? I'm like, are you okay? Are you sitting down? She's like, sitting down. You woke me up. You woke the baby up. What's going on? And I'm like, listen, she thinks I got stabbed or something, you know? I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, listen, I got some really bad news. I'm an alcoholic and an addict and I have to stay.
Mm-hmm.
It was just this pause. And all of a sudden I heard, ha, 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 like just laughing. And it's like, don't you see I was never going to come pick you up? I was never going to come pick you up. It's Adam can't do the 10 days. And Adam needs the tequila. And Adam needs to go to the gym. And Adam needs to work. Adam, 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 Adam. And this thing happened with me. It's called in therapy the parallel process. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but it hit me like a ton of bricks. And it's a very strange phenomenon. But like you see I saw two of me. I saw two parallel different realities very clear.
Mm-hmm.
And one guy was this angry alcoholic addict on the phone going, listen, you know what? You have
Mm-hmm.
to get in the car, come pick my you know what up, get the divorce papers ready. I don't care. You know, just this angry, I'm right, you're wrong. It's my way or the highway alcoholic addict.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was this other guy. Now, I didn't know if he was poor. I didn't know if he wore a yarmulke. I didn't know if he got baptized. I didn't know anything about this guy, but I knew he was sober.
Mm-hmm.
And I jumped into that guy with both feet and I never turned back.
Wow.
And what I thought was a prison literally turned into a spiritual camp.
Mm. Oh, what a story. Now, I have to ask, because I know you posted even just today in your story, right? The verse, Matthew 5:41, and you were talking in there about how you were telling God, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
So was that a part of the same story? Was that along in that you felt that way?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't remember the words. I don't remember. I remember the feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the feeling of surrender
Yeah.
and asking God, pleading with God to just take this thing from me.
Mm-hmm.
And he did. But there's two sides of a coin, right? So God did for me what I couldn't do for myself. I never craved alcohol and drugs again.
Wow.
The flip side of that coin is God will not do for you what you can do for yourself. And I attacked my program of recovery as if my life depended upon it because
Mm-hmm.
it did.
Mm-hmm.
Because it did.
Very true. Yeah. So I like to think of, and I know you have done a lot of work too with the idea of the hero's journey, which you just mentioned a little while back. I like to think about, clearly God is our ultimate hero. As you just said, he came in and did for you what you couldn't do for yourself.
Yeah.
And then I think by doing that, he helps us to become the hero of our story. And, I know you have probably great wisdom to share about the whole concept of the hero's journey. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, the hero's journey is still probably, let's say, the background story of what I take my clients through.
Mm-hmm.
And there's 7 main parts, but I break it down into 3 basic parts, which I call SIR. And there's
Mm-hmm.
the
Okay.
separation from the pain, the separation from the old story, the separation from the lies, the separation from the alcohol, the separation from the drugs. Then there's an initiation,
Mm-hmm.
I, right? Where you
Right.
learn new skills, new values, new beliefs, new actions, new ways of thinking, new ways of behaving. You
Mm-hmm.
shift your identity. And then there's R, the return home. And I love the return home because so many times in people's story, I see that they get better and then they take off and want to be somebody new.
Mm-hmm.
Love about the hero's journey is the return, that you come home and you pass this knowledge on to the people that you love.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, because that's what we're called to do, right? Is to help others, without a doubt. And I believe that's so true. The things that we go through are designed to help other people, or else, it seems kind of pointless sometimes, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And you've helped so many
Thank,
people.
thank you.
Absolutely. Well, now I know you have a couple of things coming up. You have a couple of books already out, a new book coming out.
Yeah,
You
so
want
I have a book that's already out. It's a New York Times bestseller called Lotsaholic, From a Sick to Sober Superman, which is a memoir that takes you through my whole recovery journey up to 10 years.
to?
I'm really proud of this book. And my mentor actually wrote the foreword to it. His name is Dion. And now this year, later in the year, we have a book coming up called Dion, the Rock and Roll Philosopher, Conversations on Life, Recovery, Faith, and Music. And it's a lot like Weekend at Morty's. It's
Mhm.
Dion passing on this beautiful life and this beautiful wisdom down to me. And it chronologicals his life, and he's had the most beautiful, brilliant life.
Mm.
His faith is the main thing, but his love for his wife, his love for his children, the people that he's gotten to meet, you know what I mean? The people that love him, like Bruce Springsteen, Bob Dylan, Bishop Barron, Paul Simon, Quincy Jones, Stevie Van Zandt have all contributed to the book. He's impacted a lot of lives, and it's going to come out in the opening of his Broadway play musical based on his life. And it's a
Oh,
story
wow.
of recovery.
Oh,
So really, really proud of this. We've worked really, really hard. And at the end of it, you get to see a father-son relationship, and you get to see what it's like for somebody to be able to take on this special wisdom from somebody that's lived such a magnificent life.
wow. Well, I look forward to that. That sounds like it'll be amazing.
Yeah, I'm
Absolutely.
really excited about it.
Yes. So, a question, we kind of started out the conversation talking about hope, and it's very meaningful, powerful to you. And it is to me as well in my own story. And, you know, clearly, even, in coaching, I consider myself the hope coach. And I feel like a good question to dialogue back and forth would be like, would you agree that we are never completely without hope?
It's a great question. I never really thought about that. I have to say I would disagree.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, we say in recovery sometimes the more hopeless they are, the better the chance of recovery. Um, I think it depends where you're speaking to that person and where on the journey they are
Okay.
and how dark it's gotten. I know I had lost hope.
Hmm.
I had lost all hope. Now, in saying that, that didn't mean I was suicidal, but I wanted a do-over. I just wanted to move someplace, change my name, be a completely different person. So there was no hope for me as Adam Jablin.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I do think that there are people and there are times that you can be hopeless.
Yeah. And I actually agree with that. I pose it in such a way, not trying to come across with my answer to it, but I agree there are seasons and situations that with without a doubt, there seems to be no hope in that situation. And I think if we look at it from after, okay, our conversions, and as coming at that question from a Christian's viewpoint, and then we ask it a different, in that perspective, would you then think that we are without hope?
Oh no, of course not, right? I mean, there's life on my terms,
Yeah.
there's life on life's terms, and
Mhm.
then there's life on God's
Yeah.
terms. And I think that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
Once you find your faith,
Hmm.
you're not living on those first two terms anymore.
True.
That's a
Mhm.
blessing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it brings so much hope, I think, when we're able to put those little, I'll say, glimmers of hope out there for other people to grab onto, and to see that, yes, we've been through really dark, hard things, but we're on the other side of it. you know
Amen.
Everyone's story, I believe everyone has a story. I've done myself a lot of story work, and with other clients working on their stories, going back, you mentioned the inner child, some of that type of stuff. But I really think that it's important that we recognize that everyone has a story, and when we can share a little glimmer of our hope in our story, it can be a ripple effect and help others.
Yeah, that's the main thing actually that I find in the Hero Project. I feel that I've actually find that everybody's addicted to something, and a lot of the things that they're addicted to is their story.
Mm.
If you
Mhm.
change your story, you change your life.
Yes. Yes.
So it takes a shift. And when you shift that and you do it with the right person at the right time, you get to have a whole new identity.
Hmm. Right. It's kind of reframing it. looking back at that
All
story.
it's 1000%,
Mhm.
1000%.
Yeah. I like to say it like we look back at it and we see God's hand in it, even like what you just shared about your whole recovery. Clearly, you would have to probably, I feel like you would agree that God brought you to that bottom, right? To rescue you out of it
I
and
would say that God allowed me
allowed it. That's a
to
better
to
way.
go to
Yeah.
that bottom.
Yeah, that's right.
I think if you were to rip me open and try to figure, I think there was always a destiny. I don't necessarily know if God said it's going to be with alcoholism and addiction. I think I was going to have to face a pain point, but it
Mm.
didn't have to be, I think God gives us the freedom that's the beauty of
Mhm.
God, right? He actually gives you enough free will to say that he doesn't exist.
Mm.
That's a lot of free will. That's a lot of free will. You actually have the right to say, I don't even think you exist.
Which is the only unforgivable sin, right?
Yeah. So, that's a good question. Now that I could rip open, I think he can forgive that too. I think
Well,
he forgives that too.
if you turn to believing, absolutely.
I think he forgives that too.
Yeah, that's
You
true.
know,
Yeah.
we think everything has to be on human time.
Hmm.
Oh, you may make your transition and then meet the power. And he says, what about now?
Mm.
And there's no, but I think we like to say things out of our human perspective.
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. I mean, he can forgive all of it. There's no condemnation for those of us who are in him. And we can look back on those things, those dark times or those things we've gone through that he has allowed. I like that wording a lot better. And we can see how he used it for our good.
Yeah.
And here you are, out there helping all these people to overcome things that you've been through or probably things you haven't, right? So,
Yeah, well, obviously some things I haven't, right? But they all tend to mirror one another.
mm,
So the path out of a lot of problems are very simple. There's the hero's journey for you,
yeah.
right? The path out, it doesn't matter if it's Spider-Man, Superman, Christ, Moses, Abraham, Isaac, Batman, Star Wars. You'll find the hero's journey in every single one of those. It's just one of the reasons I love using that as a template.
Yes. It's a beautiful template and it's been around from literally back to mythology, even. It's
Yeah.
just always in those stories. So many biblical stories. I agree completely. Um, well, this has been a great conversation. I've enjoyed talking to you so much. Is there anything else you would like to, any other thought you would like to share before we close out?
No, like just if anybody needs help, please contact me. I'm always open and available. And we're starting a group coaching program that I'm really excited about because doing one-on-ones can be hard all the time. But
Yes.
but yeah, no, that I'm happy to be here.
Yes, we're so glad to have you. I also have recently, about a year ago, started a group coaching for the same reason. One-on-ones are wonderful, and I love one-on-one coaching. It's kind of where it started for me, but I really have enjoyed the group, coaching program that I'm doing. It's called the Hope Collective, and what's nice is that we heal in community, and we're designed to be a part of community, and I just love that. It's awesome. I'm glad that you're offering it too.
Yeah, me too. Me too. It's
Yeah.
a lot of work in the background, so I'm excited to launch it.
Do you have a name for it yet?
Mm. So we're letting our audience choose. Right now, it looks like it may be the Hero Projects Alive and Aligned program.
Oh,
Lotsaholic was a close second, and we may just call it the Hero Project Group Coaching. So I'm going to go over that in the next 48 hours, and we're going to make a defined purpose, definite plan
yes.
there,
Awesome.
and then get the balls rolling.
All right. Well, if anyone wants to reach out to Adam for his group coaching or any other thing he's mentioned here today, you will be able to reach out to him through the show notes that are following the podcast. And thank you so much for listening.